Sorry to interrupt this great video, but please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. Hey, so I saw something and I wanted to talk about this. So ESPN did a survey of executives, coaches, scouts, and it came out their top 10 quarterbacks. And I was on the plane reading this today and I thought, that's about as close as any top 10 quarterback list I've ever seen. It goes Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Jayden, Stafford, Herbert, Goff. I've always thought Goff because he's not dynamic. He's not fun to root for. The guy was a #1 pick out of Cal. He got to a Super Bowl. I've seen him outduel Mahomes in big games. He's good. Then they go Hurts 9 and Baker 10. And I thought people, when I say this, that's about as good a list as I've seen. People would say, oh, what about Baker? Well, I got Baker, if I did a list, closer to 10 than 15 now. Yeah. I think after last year, I think I kind of scratched down a list on the plane that I had him at like 12, but I'm not bothered at all that I think Baker and Darnold are both in that 10, 11, 12 space. I'm totally comfortable with both.
I'd say Baker now has 2 straight years, and he has that second year in Cleveland. And just looking at him on the golf course, and it's been talked about, he's definitely lost weight. He looks fantastic. And there is an element, there's a Farvian element. If you remember when Dorsey took him #1 overall, the intangible kind of I would say this though, for what makes Jalen kind of unique, and the arguments over Jalen are such a waste of time. Like, he literally won the Super Bowl, Super Bowl MVP. And I looked at his contract. By the end of like 2027, he will have accumulated $200 million playing football on the field. I'm sure he's making money. He won. We can argue till we're blue in the face. Once he won the Super Bowl, he's got an element that Goff, hell, Lamar, Josh Allen, some of these guys are still chasing. I think the top 4, Mahomes hasn't played as well in the regular season as those other 3 guys the last couple of years. But we have full faith in him in the biggest moments to get it done, and he has. The top 4 is just set. If you want to argue Burrow second, Josh Allen second, I don't care. But Mahomes is 1, then you can argue the ranking of the next 3. I think what makes Stafford unique, if all the teams were equal, everyone had the same team, in a 1-game situation, in a month situation, he could outduel anyone and go to toe-to-toe with anybody. Or Jared Goff, if I told you your offensive line had a lot of question marks, you would like a Jalen Hurts, even Baker, more than Goff.
Yeah.
He can't move. Well, he's on the team with the best offensive line in the league. So it's, he benefits from that. And that's where I think, Jayden Daniels, I would have had C.J. Stroud as the 5th or 6th best quarterback last year. And if you look, he's an honorable mention in that thing.
Yeah, so I thought I may have C.J. Stroud 10 and Baker 11-ish. That felt about right. I still like Kyler Murray. So I'm in the minority here. I think he's elusive, and I think he throws a great ball.
But I think CJ's story kind of speaks to Jayden Daniels. I would say Jayden, as a rookie, it's not apples to apples, but was better than CJ, just the eye test. Numbers, we could argue, but just Jayden is about as good as it gets. But they did get to kind of fly under the radar most of the season until the playoffs. It's, what makes Brady, Peyton, Tiger Woods, Aaron Judge, whoever, great players, is every single year, every single game, Aaron Donald, for a decade, everyone circled him all week long, and he still dominated. Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor. It's Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen have been keeping defensive coordinators up at night for a long time, and they still kick ass. Same with Joe Burrow last year.
Right.
Jayden Daniels, everyone's going to take them seriously. That's why I got a lot of respect for Dan Campbell and the Lions. Early on, it's okay, the last couple of years, everyone has been approaching them like one of the best teams in the league, and they've answered the bell. Same with Jared. We'll see Jayden Daniels, no one is sleeping on you this year. That's from the shittiest team to when you're playing the Packers, the Vikings. That's hard,
Well, even baseball figured it out with analytics, is that they don't want a starter facing a batter for the 3rd time. Right. Yeah. So you go through the order twice, and then by the time you're going to face. So what they're telling you, even starting pitchers, even aces, they want you out of there by the 3rd time, because a guy after a 3rd groove on you gets a vibe. Because a lot of pitchers get better. Verlander and Wainwright in their prime, I thought Nolan Ryan was better 5th inning on. For sure. Can you imagine pulling Nolan out with a 1-hitter in the 6th? You do a Robin Ventura on you. But the reality is, there is truth to what you're saying. It is very hard in the middle of the marathon, when you're on the treadmill, to break down Jayden Daniels over the course of 2 days on a couch in an office sleeping and say, this is the solution. This is the kryptonite. When you give guys an off season, these defensive coordinators, they find play. They go through all the analytics and find out he doesn't see to his right as well as his left. He's more accurate. So I do think he was miraculous, but I'll also make this argument. If I told you combine Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, that's what I thought Jayden Daniels was. I thought he was, Burrow to me is even better than Mahomes. If you told me a 2-minute drill, a minute 50 left, no timeouts left, and protection is okay. I think Burrow's as good as anybody I've ever seen in the last 10 years. Now, Mahomes gets all the credit because Mahomes
you give him Chase and Higgins, Mahomes' numbers look a lot different, right?
You're right. That's fair. But I think Burrow's ability on 3rd down, 3rd and 7, sitting upon little tiny weird windows, you're like, what in the hell? And I thought Jayden had that mixed with about 85% to 80% of Lamar Jackson. So I thought Andrew Luck was the best rookie quarterback I've ever seen with bad teammates. I thought Jayden surpassed him. He didn't make the mistakes of Luck. So my take is, even if he pulls back 15%, John, if you start looking at his 3rd and 4th down numbers last year, 4th quarter numbers, they are Brady in his prime.
I bet a lot of people, especially the Lamar defenders, if you just look at the number, you're like, how the hell do you have him 4th? But if you read the quotes, the executives and the coaches are very complimentary of Lamar, and I agree. His passing, the progress he's made from when he first won that MVP to the version he's been these last couple of years in the rate, he's an elite player now, and he's a fantastic passer, at least in the regular season. And he was in that second half of that Bills game. It just, Mark Andrews had a couple drops. Jayden is already that immediately. Like, he's a dominant passer immediately. Now, if you tell me this year he throws 38 touchdowns and 10 picks, I'd be like, he's just on the crash course to be one of the great players of all time. I mean, if he just answers, because I thought that about CJ last year. It's like, God, this game's easy to him. And it gets hard. Offensive line wasn't quite as good. The offensive coordinator, that's the thing with Cliff. Seems like a great guy, and I know everyone in the league loves him, but I've seen his offense over the course of time get figured out a little bit. Now, I like Jayden more than I do Kyler, and it feels like, that version of Kyler that he dealt with, the maturity was a major question mark, not a question mark with Jayden. But I do think it's difficult when everyone's gunning for you like you're an all-pro immediately, and it's just, that's not how they were treated last year on a weekly basis, and they are going to get the treatment. I think when you play the Washington Commanders this year, you're not approaching the game that much different than when you're playing the Eagles. Like, this is a 12-13 win team. They could win the Super Bowl. Like, fucking, we are all in. Belichick used to go on these long, like, diatribes when he'd play like a 1-11 Miami team. It's like, Bill, remember Julian got mad at me for this. It's like, Julian, not most people can't take these awful teams seriously, but Bill could. But everyone can. And this is what Bill, and Saban was great at this too, is that they really can kind of convince you. You don't need to convince when you're playing the 10-1 Baltimore Ravens or when you're playing the peak Alabama team in your Georgia, right? It's the team. You don't need a Newt Rockne speech. You're not going to need that when you're playing Washington. And for the last decade, if you're a 7th-year player on the Cowboys or the Eagles, like, you kind of cruise through the Washington game. That's no longer the case now. It's same thing with the Lions. And that's where I think Dan Campbell deserves a lot of credit with the way he's kind of, he's a Harbaugh brother. I consider him the 3rd Harbaugh brother, the way his intensity is and his focus. And I know you were hard on him, but I do think he's proven to be pretty damn good, right?
Yeah, no, I was wrong on Dan Campbell. I thought he was a bit of a meathead. My take was, and I was just like, I don't know if he's smart enough. The league's getting really smart, really clever offensively, and he's a little bit of a rah-rah guy. But you know what? It's so authentic. He is so passionate, and it's so authentic, and I think the players can feel that authenticity, and they buy into him. And I also think he has a great front office. And it's just that's a front office that doesn't go for flash. Prime example, a couple years ago, they get, an inside linebacker or a running back. They're getting the best players available. This year, they went heavy on interior offensive linemen. It's got a Rams feel to it, and that's where he came from. Was it Brad Holmes came from Los Angeles? That they just draft really good players. This year, you're like, do the Rams need another outside linebacker? They get a Michigan kid, and they're like, he's great on tape. He's passionate. He plays hard. The Rams have, no head cases. Detroit, similarly, like, good guys. Like, all the Lions guys, like Amon St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson and Jared Goff and Penei Sewell, no a-holes, like all really, really good guys. So there are people in this league, and I think Dan Campbell has benefited from that, a really good GM, but he deserves credit. Um, I think in the NFL, you ask so much of players physically. This is why Mike Tomlin, his strength, Pete Carroll's strength. But Tomlin, Vrabel, and Dan Campbell have a physicality. They look like they could play right today.
Yeah.
Is that you ask so much of, I mean, if you have a bad thumb, you take a series off in baseball. It's understood. If you have a bad calf, you take a road trip off in the NBA. It's understood. In the NFL, you play hurt. And the coach is going to ask you to play hurt. And so when you ask athletes or men, I don't care if you're a fire chief or a police chief, you're putting people in harm's way. There is a certain personality, an alpha personality that works. You can't ask, a fire chief can't ask all those guys to run into buildings. They got to believe, those firemen have to believe that guy deeply cares about them as human beings beyond just coworkers. And I think Dan Campbell sells that. I think it's authentic. I think he loves his players. I think they feel it. I think McVay's got that quality too. And I think all the Harbaughs do. They love their players.
And listen, I'm not selling Washington because I think Dan Quinn has characteristics of that as well.
Yeah.
Of being a tough guy who's a defensive lineman in college, defensive coordinator, tough guy, but he's like a lovable tough guy. And that's very important. And I think they're pretty lucky because I think it's going to be intense for them, but they have a coach who's been through the ringer, right? He's a guy that's been fired. He had to reinvent his career. Obviously, I mean, what he did last year spoke for itself. Daboll is a good example of like a couple years ago. I'm like, this is the best coaching job I've ever seen. He won 9 games. I think they got like 3 total good players, but he'd never been a head coach. And as time went on, it just kind of, unraveled a little bit. And you don't have as much to lean on. Dan Quinn, once you've been a head coach and you've been fired, you've kind of seen it all, especially when you've had success and you've worked for the best in the business. You talk to anyone with the Chiefs, there's no taking practices off. I mean, they're not winning these games late in the season and all these playoff games close because they have a bunch of guys that just chill Monday through or Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in October and November and then start practice. You are obligated to practice. I mean, it's a tough environment. No different with the Ravens, no different now with the Chargers with Harbaugh. Like you said, it is hard. I mean, the NFL, you practice way more than you play. And these coaches, they will push you to the limit of what they are allowed to use with the pads. The CBA doesn't allow them to have that many physical practices like they used to. But the Harbaugh brothers, obviously Andy, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, surely will push it to the limit when it comes to that. So I just think the same teams are winning. We talk about this all the time, are winning over and over. I mean, look at the top quarterbacks there on the list. They also benefit from playing. I mean, Burrow's somewhat of an outlier, but they all play with really well-run. I mean, Baker resurrected his career. If you would have put Baker in like Arizona the last couple of years, probably doesn't look. But he goes to Tampa, best GM in the league, or one of them, a bunch of good players, high-level guys, and boom, resurrects his career. He's matured, and same with Jared Goff. Jared Goff just talked about, when he was traded, it really rattled him. A couple years later, gets another big extension, and now he's, I would say he's going to make 5 or 6 Pro Bowls in his time in the NFC. For the Lions.